This is an MJA Inc. Investigations warning. This MJA podcast is rated E for explicit. Some details of a case and language used on this podcast might be upsetting to some of our listeners. Listeners' discretion is advised. And for those who are still with us, kick back and enjoy the show. Welcome to our MJ podcast, this series, Unsolved Crimes. This is episode 11, part 4, 12 Unsolved Homicides in the state of California. This episode, we will profile 12 unsolved homicide cases from the state of California. My name is Mark, and I will be your host for tonight's show, which should be very interesting. Joining me later will be our co-host, Olivia. We are coming to you from Morrisonville, New York. The internet volunteer groups for true crime that are the real deal can make a collective impact in solving crimes. MJA believes the more resources you can provide to internet volunteers and citizen solvers means more citizen detective communities. One of the best citizen detective communities MJA first joined was the Cold Case Group, which was on Yahoo. It is no longer in service. We met several citizens who were true crime fighters who actually helped solve a case, and some helped getting an ID for a John or Jane Doe. MJA met victims' families who had to turn themselves into detectives to help solve their loved one's case. It was an amazing sight and very helpful. They made a collective impact in solving crimes. The Murder Accountability Project, who tracks unsolved cold cases across the nation, revealed a very dark and scary statistic. Their numbers state that there are over 250,000 unsolved murders across the nation. That means there could be several 100,000 people who got away with murder. California leads the country in unsolved homicides. There are just under 41,000 cold cases in California from 1980 to 2019. But the big question is why? There is an evil darkness in the sunny state of California. The so-called Golden State has been tarnished with pure raw evil and terror. In that darkness, there are thousands of unsolved murders. California is large, and it is easy to get from Southern California to Northern California or out of state to conceal a crime or flee. The number of jurisdictions and agencies in California are very high. It's easy to commit a crime in one jurisdiction and dump the body in another, and that creates delays. Many cases are being solved now with new technology. Genetic genealogy plays a large role, and advancement in DNA testing are at the forefront of many once cold cases. A collective impact is the foundation for the victim's family knowing that someone else cares and their loved one isn't forgotten. When you have a contained homicide scene, like in a home, business, or vehicle, the perpetrator always leaves some type of evidence behind. It just takes the right set of eyes to find or see these calling cards the killer left behind. That's what affects me, that there are so many unsolved homicides where you have a contained homicide scene. I learned this from Detective 101. MJA walks into an investigation. We have to use 6 senses: hearing, sight, touch, smell, taste, and the last being mental. Using your mental abilities will bring the other 5 together like a tossed salad. When it comes to working missing persons and unsolved homicide cases, and when you don't have a direction to follow on the case, these are the 10 avenues I follow for the curious people wanting to know. The number 1 rule when you're questioning someone: always check and confirm alibis for everyone who might be involved. It's all in the details that solves a case. Avenue 1. Check into the victim and the victim's family and friends. Avenue 2. Check any spouses, current and exes. Avenue 3. Check any current or ex-boyfriends or girlfriends. Avenue 4. Check for any affairs. Avenue 5. Check for a possible stalker. Avenue 6. Check to see if the victim led a high-risk lifestyle behind closed doors. Avenue 7. The victims are sometimes at the wrong place at the wrong time, and it becomes a crime of opportunity for the perpetrator. Avenue 8. The victim had an altercation that escalated and transformed into living in a nightmare situation and sometimes becoming a deadly situation. Avenue 9. There is a situation where the victim hasn't done anything wrong, but yet the perpetrator believes that they have. The perpetrator becomes so fixated on getting payback to repair the wrongdoing by the victim, any rational behavior is lost and their irrational mind takes over. Avenue 10. Could the victim be a victim of a serial killer? If you have no solid evidence to lead you in the right direction, then everything is on the table until proven otherwise. Sometimes, but not always, thinking of these 10 possible avenues might lead you to another more solid path to follow. Just think, 250,000 unsolved homicide cases has gone cold since 1980, and murder clearance rates continue to drop. Together, we can do better. Let's take a pause for the cause, and when we return, we will profile 12 unsolved homicides from the state of California. Welcome back to our MJ podcast, the series Unsolved Crimes. This is episode 11, part 4, 12 Unsolved Homicides in the state of California. Welcome to California. Victim 1. On January 15, 1962, 46-year-old Charlotte Smith was found bludgeoned to death in her home. Victim 2. On October 2, 1969, a Jane Doe, a white female with the estimated age of 16 to 25 years old, was found dead in a hotel room. Victim 3. On December 11, 1974, 31-year-old Patricia Ann Ross was found dead in her bedroom. Victim 4. On February 11, 1976, 43-year-old Joseph Barboza was gunned down in the streets. Victim 5. On August 9, 1979, 25-year-old Raymond Washington was gunned down in the streets. Victim 6. On March 2, 1983, 24-year-old Robert J. Robinson was found dead in his living room of his home. Victim 7. On October 16, 1985, 53-year-old Helen Swartz was shot dead in her home when she confronted an armed intruder. Case 8. It was in late October of 1990 that Billy London's body was found dismembered in a dumpster. Case 9. On September 8, 1995, Michael Nigg was shot and killed at the ATM machine. Victim 10. On January 21, 1998, 12-year-old Stephanie Crow was found dead in the doorway of her room. Victim 11. On June 1, 2001, 20-year-old Andrew Withrow was killed by a drive-by shooting on a highway. Victim 12. On March 28, 2009, 71-year-old Gerald Jerry Greer was riddled with bullets while in his home. Let's take a pause for the cause, and when we return, we'll be on the line with Olivia, and we will profile 12 unsolved homicide cases from the state of California. Be back in a moment with Olivia. Welcome back to our MJA podcast. This series, Unsolved Crimes. This is episode 11, part 4, 12 Unsolved Homicides in California. We have our co-host on the line, Olivia. How are you doing tonight?
Doing well. I go, right?
Yeah.
Welcome to California. Victim 1. Welcome to Fullerton, California. On January 15th, 1962, 46-year-old Charlotte Schmidt was found bludgeoned to death in the dining room of the San Juan Drive home she shared with her husband. The husband found her body when he returned home from work at about 5 p.m. The pathologist later determined she had been dead about 2 to 3 hours before she was discovered by her husband. There were no apparent signs of forced entry into the home, which was up for sale at the time. But the rear sliding glass door in the living room was found slightly open. Also, there was no sign of robbery. The police initially worked the case by following every protocol and then some. The investigation was followed up with another one, and that investigation was a fact-finding mission about 2 years later. The investigators contacted many people and were told of someone who was most likely a solicitor. This someone had been seen going from door to door in the neighborhood that day. Eventually, though, police were unable to focus on anyone as the perpetrator.
Victim 2. Welcome to Oakland, California. On October 2nd, 1969, our unknown white female victim was found dead in a hotel room in Oakland, California. Jane Doe's estimated age was 16 to 25 years old, who died just hours before being discovered. The state of her remains was a recognizable face, even though her cause of death was by a beating and strangulation. The unknown female victim entered room 15 at the St. Louis Hotel located at 539 7th Street in Oakland, California. In the room was Taylor Morris T. Ford, who beat the unknown female victim and then strangled her with an article of her own clothing. A 1971 news article states that the unknown white victim was a prostitute and a victim of a serial killer nicknamed the Crew Cut Killer. It has not been confirmed if T. Ford and the Crew Cut Killer are one and the same. There is a current warrant out for Taylor Morris T. Ford's arrest for murder. He may go by the name of Melvin T. Ford, who is an American Indian and originally from North Fork, California. T. Ford has a crippled right leg, and as a result, he was known to walk with a limp. Even though while crippled, T. Ford is a strong walker and was known to regularly lift weights. T. Ford is skilled at hunting and fishing. It has been reported that T. Ford drinks heavily and may have used narcotics. T. Ford is proficient with firearms of all types. It has been reported that T. Ford has a vicious and explosive temper. His criminal record began when he was 8 years old, including burglary and rape convictions. Allegedly, Taylor T. Ford murdered his grandmother and shot his sister. T. Ford was previously on the FBI's 10 most wanted list, but for different charges than listed above, which were dropped in 1972. Another strange twist. Where the St. Louis Hotel once stood is now the site of the North Alameda County Jail in Oakland, California. If anyone has any info concerning this case, please contact the Alameda County Sheriff's Office or the Coroner's Bureau at 510-382-3000 or contact the Oakland Police Department at 510-238-3821.
Victim 3. Welcome to La Palma, California. On December 11th, 1974, 31-year-old Patricia Ann Ross was overdue for a dinner engagement. When telephone calls to her apartment went unanswered, is when one of Ross's friends retraced the route she would have taken, believing her car may have broken down en route. When he arrived at her apartment at 8:15 p.m., the male friend found Patricia Ann Ross dead in the bedroom. The 31-year-old Ross had been sexually assaulted and strangled, but there were no signs of burglary or forced entry. Patricia Ann Ross had last been seen alive at about 5:30 p.m. that evening at her business called Annie Green Things. The business was a plant boutique in La Palma that she had recently sold. Police believe the 31-year-old Ross had been dead approximately 1 to 1.5 hours before she was found. Police talked to literally dozens and dozens of people, none of which panned out. Neighbors told police that all they heard was a knock on the door and a conversation at about 6:30 or 7 p.m. But there was nothing to indicate a violent struggle or anything giving them reason to call the police. Nobody saw anything or heard anything that was unusual. Police have exhausted every single one of their leads concerning the case. The case hasn't been forgotten about. For every few years, police may get a call related to the homicide, but none has provided any leads.
Victim 4. Welcome to San Francisco, California. On February 11, 1976, 43-year-old Joseph the Animal Barboza was killed by 4 shotgun blasts at close range on a San Francisco street. The 43-year-old Barboza was walking to his car after visiting friends at a San Francisco apartment when he was gunned down. Joseph the Animal Barboza was a former hitman for a Boston Mafia crime family. The 43-year-old Barboza became a household name in 1953 when he planned and led a prison breakout with 6 other inmates. When Barboza was captured the next day and was sent back to prison is when he developed some contacts in the organized crime circuit. After being released from prison, Barboza became a professional boxer. When he retired, his record was 8-3 with 5 knockouts. He fought in the legendary Boston Gardens 3 times. Their early retirement was due to the fact that he couldn't stop his criminal activity. During an Irish mob war, Barboza gained a reputation as one of the mob's deadliest killers. Barboza is suspected of killing up to 10 men during this conflict. Barboza's downfall started when he decided to wipe out the entire hierarchy of the Irish mob. Joe the Animal Barboza was emerged as one of the most feared mob killer in the country at the time. That is when the Italian mafia hired Barboza and his crew as their personal mafia hitmen. Barzo, Barbarzo was all about hunting his enemies and avoiding being hunted. He survived several attempts on his life over the years. Joe the Animal Barboza was known for his methods of torture that would just make you sick. Nothing was off limits. Barboza was arrested in 1966 on weapon charges and held on a $100,000 bail. The mafia hitman expected his mafia friends to pitch in and bail him out. In Barboza's mind, it was time that they stepped up for the animal like he had done for them in the past. But as it turns out, the mafia family he was working for were ready to let Barboza rot in prison. To the mafia, Barboza had served his purpose and was now just a liability. This mafia family had two enforcers killed because they helped collect $60,000 for Barboza's bail. That's when Barboza decided that he would cooperate with the FBI and testify against the hierarchy of the New England Mafia. The FBI was well aware of the animal that they were dealing with, but they were given a specific order: get the Italian Mafia. There were many New England Mafia bosses that were sentenced to life in prison because of Barboza's testimony. Barboza and his family disappeared into the Witness Protection Program. They were located to San Francisco, California, where Joe continued his criminal activity. Barboza kept killing people in San Francisco, and in 1971 he was convicted of second-degree murder where his real identity was unmasked in court. When Barboza was released in 1975, the New England Mafia got word of his location. It is believed that 43-year-old Joseph the Animal Barboza's killing was in retaliation for his testimony against members of the New England Mafia crime families at their trials in the 1960s. Even the FBI knows who killed Barboza, but however, the lack of evidence is why no one has ever been charged in the killing of Barboza.
Victim 5. Welcome to Los Angeles, California. 25-year-old Raymond Lee Washington was an American gangster. Washington was known as the founder of the Crips gang in Los Angeles, California. Washington formed the Crips as a minor street gang in the late 1960s in South Los Angeles and became a prominent local crime boss. In 1971, Washington formed an alliance with Stanley Tookie Williams. Washington proposed to Williams they form a confederation of the gangs under their influence in their respective areas. Along with another teenage gang leader called Mja Theme in Compton, California, to form a single large street gang. That move established the Crips as the first major African-American street gang in Los Angeles and served as one of the co-leaders. The Crips quickly established themselves as the largest street gang in Los Angeles, California, with increasing numbers and territory. The three gang leaders' influence spread across low-income black neighborhoods. Washington, Williams, and Thomas effectively held the monopoly on crime activity in these areas and became the dominant crime bosses. What they didn't predict: street gangs that had resisted being absorbed into the Crips soon formed their own Confederate alliance, the Bloods. This was to protect their independence and their interests in the criminal market. The founding of the Bloods sparked an instant rivalry between the new large gangs that saw a surge in violent crime in Los Angeles, California. As neighboring Crip and blood sets began increasing violence to fight over territory and personal feuds. In 1974, Washington was convicted of robbery and received a 5-year prison sentence. As a result, Washington's leadership and influence on the Crips declined. In 1976, Washington was paroled from prison and returned to Los Angeles, California. It was reported that Washington was shocked to discover the violent war between the Crips and the Bloods and the use of guns, which he didn't believe in. He wanted to unite the warring gangs into peace. It has been reported that the founder of the Crips' last reach was to broker a deal to end the war between the Crips and the Bloods. On August 9th, 1979, it was reported that Washington was hanging out on the corner when a car pulled up and the unidentified occupants called him over to the car. Washington's associates, as well as the police, were aware he would never walk up to cars of people that he did not know. So most likely Washington knew the occupants of the vehicle, as he told an acquaintance that he knew them. Washington engaged in a brief conversation with them before the occupant in the passenger seat drew a sawed-off shotgun and shot 25-year-old Raymond. Washington, founder of the Crips, is dead in the street. Different theories exist on why Washington was killed and who might have been involved. One of those theories was the deal Washington was trying to broker for peace between the gangs, and some say many factions of the gangs didn't want peace. No suspects have been arrested, and Washington's murder is still unsolved.
Victim 6. Welcome to Imperial Highway, California. On March 2nd, 1983, 24-year-old Robert J. Robinson was found bludgeoned to death in the living room. The 24-year-old Robinson's dead body was located in his downstairs apartment in the 300 block of Imperial Highway in California. Robinson was found by several members of his family at around 6:30 p.m. when they arrived to pick the 24-year-old Robertson up for dinner. Police state there was no signs of forced entry or burglary in the apartment where Robinson lived alone. Police believe the 24-year-old Robinson was killed shortly before he was discovered. Police interviewed 25 to 30 people, but no one had seen or heard anything. Robert J. Robinson worked as a pool cleaner. There was wild rumors shared between his friends that the 24-year-old Robinson would talk about some of his female customers, once telling some of his friends that he didn't know there were so many ways for a woman that could seduce a man. Being bludgeoned to death could be a sign that the murder was personal. Is it possible that there was a female customer where her husband or boyfriend found out about an affair that she was having with the pool man? So think about it. Was the murder of the 24-year-old Robinson personal, or just a random someone full of rage, or could it be both? Let's take a pause for the cause, and when we return, Olivia and I will profile 6 more unsolved homicides from the state of California. Be back in a moment. Welcome back to our MJ podcast, this series, Unsolved Crimes. This is episode 11, part 4. 12 unsolved homicides in California.
Victim 7. Welcome to Villa Park, California. On October 16, 1985, 53-year-old Helen Schwartz was gunned down in her home. It was about 1:30 that afternoon when Helen Schwartz and her husband returned home and were confronted by an armed intruder. 53-year-old Helen Schwartz was shot in the head. Helen's husband fled out a side door and was able to call for help from a neighbor's house. The sheriff's department described the killer as a male Latino between 21 and 25 years old. PERP was about 5 feet 9 inches to 5 feet 10 inches tall and weighing 140 to 150 pounds. The male Latino had black collar-length hair with a full mustache and a goatee. No arrests were made at the time, and the case is still unsolved. It's public record that investigators talked to many people during their investigation into this case. Years later, a reenactment was done concerning this case because of the husband's statements. It was proven that the husband couldn't have been involved. The path to the neighbor's house to call for help, the police searched that area and found no evidence of a gun or bloody clothes. Also, it's our understanding that the home and vehicle were also searched and no evidence was located.
Victim 8. Welcome to Los Angeles, California. In late October of 1990, a body was found dismembered in a dumpster near Santa Monica Boulevard. The body parts were identified as William Arnold Newton. Newton was an actor and producer of gay pornography films. Newton established a production company with adult film producer David Ray, who also became his lover. Newton went by several names: Billy London or Billy Porter, and when acting as a producer, it was Bill E. London. Under the name of Bill E. London, Newton also acted as a beautician and set designer. The homicide of Billy London, the name he was using at the time, case remains unsolved. The Unsolved Homicide cold case was reopened in 2005, only to be abandoned soon after. Newton's own father, Richard Harriman, was reported as saying that the LAPD weren't properly investigating the case. Followers of Newton, Billy London, and his murder was seen as an example to those in the gay community not being given the proper attention by police, claiming this was simply due to their sexual identity and line of work.
Victim 9. Welcome to Hollywood, California. On September 8th, 1995, Michael Nigg and his girlfriend, who stayed in the car, stopped by a bank in Hollywood to take money out from an ATM machine. Nigg was approached by two men who asked for his cash. Nigg refused and was promptly shot in the head, and the killers walked to a getaway car and drove off. Nigg's death occurred on the night of September 8th, 1995, 1 month before the O.J. Simpson trial ended. Why do we mention the O.J. trial? Michael Nigg had strange connections to the deaths of, Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman. Michael Nigg was an aspiring actor who waited tables in the L.A. area, including the one where Goldman and Brown had their last meal. LAPD believes it is possible that Nigg was killed as a result of his involvement in drug dealings in the area. The restaurant Nigg had previously worked at had other waiters fall victim to foul play, including 2 disappearances. There were 3 suspects that were arrested for the murder of Michael Nigg, but the lack of evidence set them free. The murder of Michael Nigg remains an unsolved homicide. Another strange twist to the case, O.J. Simpson himself stated he believes that Brown and Goldman's deaths were also drug-related because of Brown's female roommate.
Victim 10. Welcome to Escondido, California. On the morning of January 21st, 1998, 12-year-old Stephanie Crow was found dead in the doorway of her bedroom. Even though the 12-year-old Crow had been stabbed 9 times, The police could not gather sufficient DNA evidence, and they never found the murder weapon. Stephanie Crow's family members also claim they did not see or hear anything out of the ordinary during that night. Eventually, Crow's brother, Michael, admitted to the murder under extreme coercion and manipulation by local authorities. The 12-year-old Crow's brother was initially charged with his sister's murder, but Michael Crow was never prosecuted because his confession was forced. Schizophrenic drifter Richard Tuitt was another suspect. Tuitt had been seen in Crow's neighborhood the night before Stephanie's death, banging on doors looking for a girl named Tracy. Richard Tuitt was convicted for the murder of 12-year-old Crow in 2005, but Tuitt was acquitted after a new trial in 2013 due to the lack of evidence. 12-year-old Stephanie Crow's homicide is still unsolved.
Victim 11. Welcome to Sacramento County, California. It was late on a Saturday night on June 1st, 2001, and 20-year-old Andrew Withrow was a passenger in a car that his friend was driving. They were in one of the few cars on Highway 99 in Sacramento County, California at the time. It was then Withrow and his friend traveling on Highway 99 when someone pulled up next to them and opened fire. The driver called 911 to report he and Withrow had just been shot. The friend driver stopped driving in the middle of the highway, which caused several cars to hit them, and the car erupted in flames. The driver escaped the flames even though he had been shot. He survived, but Withrow did not. Over 21 years ago, 20-year-old Andrew Withrow was shot and killed in a drive-by shooting on Highway 99 in Sacramento, California, where the driver and Withrow in the wrong place at the wrong time. June 1st, 2001, they were heading north, approaching the Fruit Ridge exit when someone pulled up next to them and started shooting. Andrew Withrow's family was in absolute shock and it was so devastating when police notified them of Withrow's death. It was reported that Withrow was a good guy with a lot of close friends, but shortly before this tragedy, things started to change. In those most recent weeks before his death, Withrow was hanging out with a new crowd. Some of Withrow's friends didn't know them very well. The drive-by shooting doesn't make sense. So many questions. Was it gang-related? Was the shooting and killing random? Was Withrow and his friend caught in the crossfire of something else? There are many people who believe that to solve this case, someone needs to come forward with the correct info. Some people think it would have to be someone directly involved in the drive-by shooting. Police have exhausted all leads, and at this point, police have a big mystery on their hands. There were 2 bullets taken from Andrew Withrow's bodies. Those bullets were examined by the crime lab, and the results are inconclusive. In 2002, a $5,000 reward was set up for information leading to an arrest. 20 years later, with a reward, they still have no leads. The driver was shot 3 times. When the driver first started talking with people about what happened, all indications were that this was some type of a road rage incident. There are many who believe it's an odd thing even in this day and age. 20-year-old Andrew Withrow and his family seeks justice. If you know any info concerning the case, contact Sacramento Police Department.
Victim 12. Welcome to Templeton, California. On March 28, 2009, 71-year-old Gerald Jerry Greer was sleeping in his Templeton, California home when his body was riddled with bullets, killing him instantly. The Greers are a family with deep ties to the area who settled on a ranch at Santa Rita Road in 1940. The 71-year-old Jerry Greer was a quiet man and who was well known and popular in the community. Greer's mysterious murder rattled people in Templeton and surrounding areas for months afterward. The murder mystery also transformed and divided the Greer family. Jerry Greer's son believes the investigation has been compromised by several changes in the sheriff's homicide team. Jerry Greer's son is a sergeant at a California state prison. The son recalled that his father's body was discovered on a Saturday, but sheriff officials did not immediately notify him or his sister of their father's death. Instead, the son heard about the slaying when a co-worker sent him a text the following Monday. By then, investigators had already completed their forensic examination of the murder scene. They had turned the house over to the victim's brother the night before. In the son's eyes, that seems awful fast to collect evidence. When sheriff deputies recovered Jerry Greer's will in the house, it listed his son and daughter as the only beneficiaries. Jerry Greer's son knew that his father's immediate family would lead the list of suspects. The victim's son stated, "That's just the way it is," and he wanted the sheriff to look at him as soon as possible. The son knew the family comes under suspicion first, so the son volunteered his computer, cell phone, and his DNA. Anything the police wanted, the son gave it to them. Jerry Greer's body had been discovered by his brother after Jerry failed to show up for a tractor part. The front door was locked, but the back door was standing wide open. Investigators looked closely at a young woman who lived in the neighborhood. She had problems with drugs and the law and her boyfriend, but the trail dried up when the pair retained an attorney. Jerry Greer's son is not happy with the progress of the investigation into the March 28, 2009 murder of his father. Their investigation has gone nowhere. The son claims investigators botched what he considered a solid lead he had provided. Because police had the son as their number one suspect in his father's murders, public records indicate that robbery was said to be the motive. Jerry Greer was known to keep substantial amounts of cash in the house, but nothing appeared to be missing in the aftermath. A few weeks later, detectives contacted the son and asked for information on the conversation he had with the young woman who had a possible lead. It seems the police lost the phone number of the young woman and that the son had turned over. When detectives get tunnel vision and they wait so long to follow up any other type of info, which is what happened in this case. Jerry Greer's son and daughter are offering a substantial reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction. Olivia, is there anything you would like to add to these cases?
Yeah, I have three the kind of questions for you about these cases. The one with Barboza.
Yeah.
Was he? I know Bolger. He was with the Irish mob.
Yeah.
But was there any connection there? Because they found Bolger in California. I'm just finding this kind of odd.
No, see, Bolger was just up and coming when this was going. Bolger didn't even have a reputation.
Yeah. No, he started in the 50s, I thought, Bolger.
Well, so did this guy. He originally started in the 50s. Yeah. Yeah, and Bolger came after.
Yeah. All right. Also, the Bloods and the Crips, that was quite amazing. I didn't know they started out in California because, they're all through this state here where I am. And
Yeah, they
I didn't
branched
know.
out. Yeah, they branched out.
They're all over the country now.
Yeah.
And that case, what's his name, Nick? You think he could be involved with Nicole's death? Nicole Simpson? Her
Well,
death?
there's just some
There's a lot of
circumstances.
questions about that death,
Yeah.
whether he killed her or. I also heard too that it could have been drug related too, because I think she liked the nose candy.
Well,
That's what I heard.
also Faye Resnick, who was standing there at the time, it was proved that she did owe some Colombian coke dealers money for cocaine,
Yeah.
and it was leaked that Nicole was given a Columbia necktie.
Yeah, that's what I heard too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, just very interesting cases. You know, Barboza for some reason, the name rings a bell. Maybe it's because of the fighting.
Oh yeah, he's like I
Fighting.
said, he was the most feared man at the mob at the time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, they have the two in Boston. They have the Italians and the Irish mob.
Yeah, yeah.
I think the Irish are in South Boston. The others are in North Boston.
Yeah, that's
Not
where
North, the North End.
that's where Whitey got his first name. It was called Southie because he was in the
Southie,
South End.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was a character, quite the character.
Oh yeah, and what just came out this week? They arrested 3 inmates who beat him to death in prison. They arrested him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Came out
they
this
arrested
week.
him.
Yeah.
Well, how did they get to him? He was in a wheelchair, I heard. He couldn't walk anymore.
There's in prison, even in solitary confinement, there's still ways of getting to somebody. If you really want to do it.
Yeah. What was that in California, right? Well, he got caught in California.
I don't know exactly. I just saw the headlines. I didn't read the story.
I don't know what prison it was in. I think it was the Midwest somewhere. That's where they usually put them, right?
It just depends. They have federal prisons everywhere. So.
Yeah. But that's it. I had those few questions for you.
All right. I have a quote for you all. 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things that you didn't do than by the ones you did do. So throw off the bow lines, sail away from the safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, discover. H. Jackson Brown, Jr. I want to thank Olivia for being on the show tonight. We also want to thank our viewers and listeners for tuning in, for y'all have been so kind. That's the end of our MJ podcast series, Unsolved Crimes. This was episode 11, part 4, 12 Unsolved Homicides in California. Always remember, folks, if you ever get bored with nothing to do, well, take a walk deep into the woods. You might be surprised at what you might find. We say to all of you, good night from Morrisonville, New York.
How the body believes. floating coastline through the atmosphere, like spirit vines crawling deep through the underskin. Things will change like they always wanna be alive, and people fade, becoming a ghost in the afterlife. Cool in the clouds, won't you leave your arm around? Float from the ground, out of body, leaving all we found. Won't you leave your